Aloha from not Hawaii, but Southern California, almost. And it's not actually very sunny today. It's kind of overcast and gray, but it's not like cold or anything, so I'll take it. As you can see, I am dressed in a Hawaiian shirt. I have Hawaiian jewelry on, and I'm sitting under my beachy Hawaiian-ish tiles. This is kind of a corner of my backyard. And by now you may have figured out that today's video will be on making Hawaiian bread. Now, here's the story and the reason I'm sitting. Well, I thought this would be pretty scenery, but the reason I'm sitting is because I do have a little bit of an explanation. When I first started really getting heavy duty into baking bread, I must have tried 6, 7, 8 Hawaiian bread recipes that I got online and in cookbooks and from other people. And I tried them and I tried modifying them and I just couldn't get it right. But one other time I sort of made my own recipe for what I call my pull apart rolls, and they're here in my channel. And my son, because he's kind of funny, my son said, you know, Mom, forget the Hawaiian bread. These rolls are the same texture as Hawaiian bread. I've got a bird chiming in here. And they don't taste like a Hawaiian bread, but they're just as good. Mom, just forget the Hawaiian bread. Stick with these. We're good. These are amazing. So it's been a few years and I haven't tried a recipe. Boy, that bird is really talking to us today. So anyway, I decided just in the last couple of weeks that I wanted to try again. And instead of trying recipes online, I decided to try and flavor the ones that the pull apart rolls, because they're already the perfect texture and everything else. So I have been practicing, and my dad and my husband have been the guinea pigs, and it took 4 tries and 2 different kinds of pineapple juice. And yes, the secret ingredient is pineapple juice. And finally, the other day, we tasted it, and I actually even bought some King's Hawaiian rolls to kind of compare. And mine was not just as good, it's better. Doesn't have preservatives. It doesn't have that kind of slightly chemical flavor of store-bought bread. So today, I'm going to share with you my newly developed, after much angst and many tries, Hawaiian bread. Oh, and you're in for a treat because I'm going to make rolls and a loaf of bread. I'm going to do the same dough, 2 different bread machines, so you're going to get to see what it looks like as bread and as rolls. See you in the kitchen. Welcome back to my mad scientist lab. Oh, not a mad scientist. I mean kitchen. Welcome back to my kitchen. And as you can see, I have 2 bread pans, 2 sets of ingredients, one there, one here. The only thing I didn't pre-measure out is my vanilla extract. So before we start, I want to talk a little teeny bit about the pineapple juice. The first 2 times I made the bread, I used this. It's canned pineapple juice, not from concentrate. It does not have added sugar, at least listed in the ingredients. When my husband tasted this pineapple juice, he's like, well, and the bread reflected that. So do not buy this one. I finally got the idea that something that actually had pineapple in it might be better. So then I went and I bought this one. And you don't have to buy this brand, but it's crushed pineapple in 100% pineapple juice. And that's the takeaway. Crushed pineapple in 100% pineapple juice. Unless you have a pineapple juice that you just really love. But I wanted it to be very concentrated. So I actually pureed this even more with an immersion blender and then pushed the pineapple through the juices. And as you can see over here, I'm still draining some. See the pineapple in there. So anyway, so that's the pineapple juice that I'm using. Whatever works for you is okay, but I wanted it to be very flavorful, richly pineapple-y flavor. Although you don't taste the pineapple in the bread, it just tastes good. All right, so you can see that I must have had 10 or 11 Post-its. This is the recipe I'm working off. You don't need to, show that necessarily, cameraman, but I haven't even typed it up yet. That's how new this recipe is. So, first ingredient is half and half. I have 120 grams in here. Half and half is a dairy product we have in the United States. I'm gonna run over here just to make sure. I have a new friend from Scotland who might not know. It's half milk, half cream. And so you can use whole fat milk, or you can use this. I just don't buy milk. I always have this in the house because hubby uses it for his coffee. I end up using it. It works. There you go. All right. So we're going to put 120 grams of half and half. I have equal amount, 120 grams of the pineapple juice that I drained out of the crushed pineapples. I have 1 egg, slightly beaten. You don't have to beat it all the way, but slightly, just mostly beaten. I'm just going to run some cold water in there really fast. All right. And I have 65 grams of honey. This is a sweet bread. Very sweet, but not sickening sweet. I've sprayed my little beaker thing with nonstick spray and measured the honey into it. So mostly it should fall mostly out easily, but because it takes a while, I'm just going to give it a little help with my trusty spatula. It's funny how you can have 10 or 15 different spatulas and use them all for different things. Some people probably think that's a little weird. All right. So I'm just going to stick this over here for now. All right, so I have my half and half, my pineapple juice, my honey, my egg. I grabbed the wrong vanilla. Be right back, don't go anywhere. I'm here, I didn't leave you. That vanilla wasn't opened yet. Okay, I'm not measuring the vanilla. I'm putting in a splash. Probably half a teaspoon, whatever you want. Okay, and my next ingredient is bread flour. I always use King Arthur bread flour, 545 grams. You don't need to get close up. It's all right. All right, and then I have 64 grams of granulated sugar. I always put it on the right, just for my sanity in case I get interruption and can't remember if I put in the sugar and if I put in the salt. So that's what I do. And speaking of salt, I have 7 grams of salt that goes on the other side. And I have 57 grams of salted butter. If you want to use unsalted butter, because that's what you have in the house, add another gram of salt to the recipe. Small detail. Okay. And last but not least, I have, and this is going to be weird, 8.5 grams of yeast. 8 was too small, 9 was too big, 8.5. Now, my scale, this is my favorite scale. It's a little dirty from measuring, but it's the Tech City food scale. Comes in like a silver color and this red. It's usually very, very inexpensive. It does measure to the 1/10 of a gram. That's what I prefer because I like to be extremely accurate. If your scale only goes to grams and you don't want to buy another scale, just put in 9 grams and take out a pinch. It'll be fine. Make a little well in the flour, stick in the yeast, and I will, in a minute when we're off camera, walk across the kitchen to my bread machine, my first one, and put this in and start it. After that, off camera, I will measure the same exact ingredients into the second bread pan, and that will go in the bread machine, and I'll stagger it maybe 10 minutes later. I'll use, for number one, I will make a loaf, because that only just takes a minute to kind of plop it in the loaf pan. But for the second batch in bread machine number two, I'm going to make rolls, and that involves, cutting the hunks and weighing them and making sure and putting them in the tray, and it takes about 10-15 minutes to get that done. So if I tried to make rolls with the first batch and didn't leave enough time with the second batch, I'd be scrambling. So if you are making two recipes of anything, it doesn't matter, of anything, unless you're just making loaves of bread where you can just plop it in and be putting it into rise and be done, I would suggest that you don't start your bread machines too close together, because you'll be, because believe me, I've done it. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this one started in the bread machine on dough course. Yes, you can make it all the way through in the bread machine. You would just use the basic or white bread. So I'm going to get this one ready, and I will show you the dough as it processes along the way. Always, always, always have to check my dough about 5 minutes into the kneading process to make sure it's not too wet or too dry. I do have a lot of liquids, and I have been having to add flour every time. So this time I actually lowered the liquid measurements by a few grams, and it hopefully will be closer, but it's no big deal. I know how to adjust. Sometimes I have to add liquid, sometimes I have to add flour. It's just part of bread making. All right, we'll see you when the dough starts kneading and I'm checking for too wet, too dry. I forgot to show you before, but I did have to add about 10 grams of flour, not too much, that's about a tablespoonful. A sure sign your dough is too wet is if there's a layer of dough under the paddles, like kind of in a circle. That is a telltale, absolutely no question, too wet. This feels wet, but it's not sticky, it's tacky, so I think it's okay. So now I'm gonna check bread machine number two. Oh, that's interesting. Same measurements, two different bread machines, same recipe. Did not need to add flour to the second one. I don't understand, but there you have it. That is really weird. I started these about 10 minutes apart. This is rising. It's gonna start baking. Well, it's not gonna start baking, I'm baking in the oven, but it has about 20 more minutes, I think, left to rise. And this has about, I think, 40 minutes left to rise. I will tell you that this bread doesn't rise very much on dough cycle. It does rise, but not like a lot, so don't be alarmed. And it doesn't even rise quite as much as other breads, in the 40 minutes of rising time. It puffs up during baking. Some recipes do that. Aloha once again, and mahalo, which means thank you in case you don't know, for continuing on. This is the dough that just came out of the bread maker. Oh, smells so heavenly. And I've shaped it just a little teeny bit. I'm just going to pop it in the loaf pan. And I'm going to, this time I'm going to let it rise in my smart oven over here, just for fun. I didn't plan on doing that, but I just decided. And my smart oven has a proof setting, and it proofs at 85 degrees, which is perfect. So I'm gonna set it to proof, and it remembers that I like 40 minutes, so I'm gonna leave that in there. And that will rise, and then I will bake, but I won't bake it in here because it's so short, and then when this puffs up, it's too close to the hot element on the top, and it gets brown too fast, and I don't like baking in it. I can bake short little rolls, but I cannot easily, or I can bake a loaf of bread, but I don't prefer to do it that way. So the next segment will be me making the rolls out of the same dough that's in the second bread maker that will be done in just a couple minutes. My second batch of dough is ready. Oh, I can't tell you how yummy this smells. And I weighed the whole thing, and it weighed, I think, 1,038 grams, and we divided that by 15, and it's about 70 grams per roll. So I'm going to do 3 across and 5 down. 3 times 5 is 15, right? Yes. Okay, so I'm looking for about 70 grams. It's a little extra. And I don't get too crazy. 73 is fine. 69 will be fine. This is a beautiful, I don't know, there's something about this dough that's really nice to the touch. I like it. So you kind of form a ball. Doesn't have to be super perfect. And plop it in. And I bet that's going to be over. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it's still over. That's 81. So I'm going to have my hubby stop the camera for now because you don't need to watch me weigh 15 hunks of dough, but I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So you can see that I've tried to get these in here evenly spaced. What I did is weigh the dough and decided to make 15. Now, I usually use a foil pan that's like 9 by 12 or 9 by 13. This, I think, is around that same. I didn't measure it, but it doesn't matter. It will work. You could even make little round pie plates or use like a little fluted quiche dish. Whatever you want to use. You could make the rolls bigger. You could make the rolls smaller. I just randomly chose this. I think I usually do even closer to 20, but it just depends on what you feel like doing. So this is what I chose to do today. That doesn't mean I choose exactly 15 every time. I'm going to move this over here a bit, and we're going to walk over to the oven and talk about the final rise. I'm going to move my tray to the middle. And this is what I do when I do final rise in the oven. I know that a lot of you have watched me do this before, and if you want to take that little dot and fast forward a little bit, it's okay with me. If I knew you did it, I wouldn't be offended to do the same thing. So what I do for my final rise in the oven is I want it just slightly warmed. So I turn on my oven to bake, and I set it to the lowest temperature my oven will do, which is 170. Start the oven, and I set a timer for 1 minute. I set a timer for 1 minute because that's the only amount of time that you need for this oven to become slightly warm, which is about 80 or 85 degrees. We do not want this oven to preheat all the way to 170. That would be a little too hot. It could kill your yeast and you wouldn't have a very good product. So if your kitchen is cold especially, then this is the way to kind of ensure a better final rise. Or even if you're making bread by hand or using a mixer and you do your rises, do it in the oven. It's draft free and it's the perfect temperature. So you can see we're at about 16 seconds. The reason I set a timer absolutely every time is I forget. You think you're gonna stand in your kitchen and go do one thing and you're gonna remember to come back in a minute. Trust me, most of you will not. So when this timer goes off, I cancel the timer and I immediately turn off the oven. And when I stick my hand in here, it just feels like walking out of air conditioning into a warm day. It's not hot, it's just warm. I'm going to pop these beautiful little Hawaiian rolls into this just slightly warmed oven. It's not hot, just slightly warmed. And I'm going to set a timer for 40 minutes. They really end up rising 45 to 50 minutes because when I take them out of here, I still have to preheat my oven. I guess technically I could, at 35 minutes, preheat my bottom oven. I don't do that. I just take it out, preheat my oven to 350, and put them into bake. So that's what's going to happen. I will show you what they look like when they've risen. Same thing with the loaf of bread rising in my little Breville Smart Oven. So this is the loaf of bread dough, and it has risen. Like I said earlier, it doesn't puff up really, really big, but it will definitely puff up as it's baking. Some doughs are like that. My master butter dough recipe, when I make cinnamon rolls, I don't feel like they've risen very much, but then they puff up when I bake them. So some doughs rise more before you bake them and some after. So don't panic if this recipe doesn't rise super huge. I'm just now preheating the oven and I will bake it. The rolls have risen. They're not huge, but you can tell that they've grown together because they weren't touching before. And as they bake, they will puff up somewhat more. I have not made this dough into rolls yet. I'm assuming it will work, but we will find out. All right, I'm preheating the oven right now. The loaf is baking and the rolls, the other oven is preheating for the rolls. So all will be revealed soon. Everything's out of the oven. There's my bread. And here are the rolls. Everything is a little too hot, but I will add one final part at the end of the video where I show you what they look like on the inside. Yummy! So they are all out of the oven. The bread, look at the beautiful, I want you to see this. I'm about to lose it there. Nice and fluffy, cloud soft. And now I'm going to grab one of these rolls. I can't show you the taste, but I can certainly show you the wonderful texture. Oh, yes. And flavor. Oh my God. So, this is what a certain Hawaiian bread roll that we all buy at the grocery store wants to taste like. It tastes like that, except for it tastes better. It's homemade. Oh, it's sweet, but it's not like dessert sickening sweet. You could use this for a sandwich and it wouldn't be weird. Oh my God. If you don't like pineapple, don't worry. You don't taste it as pineapple. I don't like pineapple. The only time I have ever liked pineapple was in Hawaii when we got a really amazing pineapple. And that was good, but most of the time, I don't like pineapple. This is absolutely amazing. I have to say, guys, this has been a quest. I'm so proud of myself. Trial and error and trial and error. It works. I can't stop eating these. Mahalo. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.